cop slapped a black woman in court. Then she took the judge's seat. Their smirks vanished. They said justice was blind. But what happens when the very guardians of justice mock your pain? What happens when the badge meant to protect becomes a hand that silences? In the middle of a crowded courtroom, she stood with nothing but her truth, and still, it wasn't enough. An officer's hand came down across her face, sharp, humiliating, final. The sting wasn't just on her cheek. It seared through her dignity, through every unspoken memory of generations who had been told to stay silent. And around her, they laughed, the officers with their smirks, the judge with his indifference, the system with its silence. But here's the part they never saw coming. Because pain, when carried long enough, can turn into power. The next time they looked up at her, she wasn't standing in chains. She was sitting in the judge's seat. And in that single impossible moment, every smirk vanished. This isn't just her story. It's a reflection of ours. And if hearing it unsettles you, good. Don't look away. Share it. Talk about it. Because silence is the only thing that keeps this cycle alive. Before the slap, before the smirks, before the courtroom walls closed in, she was just a woman living her life, with dreams stitched together from the ordinary and extraordinary. Her name was Angela. To the people in her neighborhood, she wasn't a headline or a case file. She was the one who always waved good morning from her porch, the one who brewed too strong coffee that carried down the block, the one whose laughter could spill into the street like sunlight after storm. Angela grew up in a small, tight-knit community where everyone knew everyone. The streets were filled with the familiar. Corner stores with flickering neon signs, the old church bells that rang every Sunday morning, and children chasing each other between cracked sidewalks. There was resilience in the air, because people there had learned to survive what the world threw at them. But there was also warmth, the kind of warmth that made strangers family. Her daily routine was simple but steady. Mornings began with gospel on the radio and a notebook on her kitchen table, where she scribbled ideas, half poems and half plans for the future. She worked as a legal aide in a downtown office, filing motions, organizing casework, and quietly carrying the weight of stories that weren't hers but felt too close to ignore. She had always believed in the law, believed it could be a shield, and if not for her, then maybe for someone else, someone who needed it more. Yet even in those ordinary days, the cracks showed. She remembered the stares when she walked into courthouses, the way security guards checked her badge twice while her white colleagues walked by unquestioned. She remembered the time she was told to smile more, to calm down, to not take it so personally when she pointed out disparities. They called it professionalism. She called it erasure. Still, Angela endured. She had resilience carved into her bones. Her mother used to tell her, "Baby, the world won't hand you justice. You got to fight for it, but don't let the fight turn you bitter." And so she fought in small, quiet ways, volunteering at community centers, mentoring young girls who looked like her, staying late at work to prepare files no one else wanted to touch. At home, she wasn't just Angela the aide or Angela the advocate. She was Angie, the one who never missed her nephew's school play, the one who taught her niece how to braid her hair on warm summer nights. She was a woman who planted flowers outside her apartment building, insisting that beauty deserved space even in places the city had forgotten. Her community knew her as steady, dependable. But inside, she carried a constant hum of unease, because every small slight, every delayed promotion, every subtle dismissal was a reminder that her presence in these spaces was tolerated, not welcomed. And deep down, she knew the law she worked under was not built with her in mind. Still, she dreamed. She dreamed of going to law school herself one day, of standing in court not just as support staff, but as someone who could argue, defend, protect. She dreamed of being a judge, not for prestige, but for the possibility of seeing fairness lived out in real time, to look into the eyes of someone like her and say, "I see you, and I hear you." But dreams like that felt far away, like stars you could point at but never touch. What Angela didn't know then, what no one in her neighborhood, her office, or her own family could have guessed, was that life had already set her on a collision course with the very system she worked within. The warmth of her days, the laughter, the flowers, the coffee, All of it would soon stand in stark contrast to a courtroom slap that would change everything. And when it did, the world would no longer know her as just Angela, the woman from the block. They would know her as something far greater and far more dangerous to a system that had always underestimated her. Angela's life was built on quiet perseverance. But even perseverance has limits, and cracks began to show long before the courtroom slap that would one day echo across her destiny. It started small, in ways so subtle you almost missed them. A colleague forgetting to copy her on emails, her name omitted from a project she had poured hours into. She told herself it was oversight, not malice, but the pattern spoke louder than excuses. She was there, present, capable, yet invisible whenever recognition was handed out. The courthouse, where she spent her days filing motions and preparing cases, should have been a place of dignity. Instead, it often reminded her of her place in an unspoken hierarchy. She remembered standing in line at security, her ID badge scrutinized while others breezed through. She remembered an officer smirking when she politely asked him to recheck a docket. "Don't get feisty," he said, like her very presence was an act of aggression. Each day, the indignities piled higher. None of them made the evening news. But inside Angela, they carved scars. The strain followed her home. She found herself snapping at her sister over small things, unable to explain the heaviness pressing down on her chest. She stopped playing gospel in the mornings because the melodies that once lifted her only reminded her of battles she couldn't win. At night, she lay awake replaying encounters, whispering questions to the ceiling. Was it really racism? Or was I just overthinking? Gaslighting herself became a survival tactic, but survival doesn't erase pain. It only buries it, waiting for a spark. That spark came on an ordinary afternoon. Angela had been called to assist with a case involving a young black teenager, barely 16, accused of resisting arrest. She read the file. No weapon, no prior record. Just a boy, scared and cornered. The officer's report painted him as a threat, but the bruises on his mugshot told another story. Angela carried the file to her supervisor, her voice steady but urgent. "We can't let this stand. This boy deserves better representation." Her supervisor barely looked up. "It's not our job to fight every battle. Just process the paperwork." That was the moment Angela felt something shift. The law wasn't just flawed, it was complicit, and she realized she could no longer separate her job from her conscience. The boy's case haunted her. She visited his mother in the waiting area, offering quiet reassurance though she had no official role to play. She watched as lawyers shuffled past, treating the case like a chore, while this mother sat trembling on a hard bench. Angela felt the full weight of helplessness and fury. Word began to spread around the courthouse. Angela wasn't just doing her job. She was stepping out of line. An officer joked in the hallway, "Careful, she's trying to be a lawyer now." Another whispered louder than necessary, "Women like her don't last long in this building." The whispers became warnings. One afternoon, as she walked to her car, she found a note tucked under the windshield wiper. No signature, just 3 words scrawled in ink. "Stay in place." Her hand shook as she folded the note, but her resolve hardened. Fear had followed her all her life. She was tired of bowing to it. Then came the point of no return. Angela was subpoenaed to testify in a small dispute. Routine, she thought. But inside that courtroom, the mask of civility dropped. She took the stand, her voice calm as she answered questions. Then, when she corrected a mistake made by the officer presenting evidence, the air shifted. The officer's jaw tightened. The judge raised an eyebrow. And then, in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the officer stepped toward her and struck her across the face. The sound was sharp, a crack that cut through the courtroom hush. Angela staggered, clutching her cheek, her eyes burning not from tears, but from disbelief. Around her, laughter bubbled, some muffled, some brazen. She searched the judge's face for outrage, for intervention, for anything. But he only leaned back, indifferent, as though what just happened was a nuisance, not an assault. Humiliation filled the air like smoke. That moment marked the death of her illusions. Every microaggression, every whisper, every slammed door, it had all led to this. The system wasn't broken. It was functioning exactly as designed. But what they didn't see, what none of them realized, was that something else was born in that moment, too. Angela's resolve. Her fury was no longer a private burden. It was a fire, visible and unstoppable. She left the courthouse that day with a red cheek, but also with a vision clearer than ever before. She would not be silenced. She would not stay in place. She would rise higher, not in spite of their violence, but because of it. The road ahead would not be easy. She knew that. Nights of study, of exhaustion, of setbacks awaited her. But she also knew something the officers and the judge could never understand. Dignity, once taken, demands restitution. And Angela was ready to claim hers. The slow burn of indignities had finally ignited. And from this point on, nothing, no smirk, no slap, no system, could put out the fire. The courtroom was silent, but inside Angela's chest, a storm raged. She could still feel the phantom sting of that officer's hand, the echo of laughter that had cut her deeper than the slap itself. For weeks, she replayed that moment. The humiliation lodged like a shard of glass beneath her skin. But time has a way of reshaping wounds into weapons. Angela studied harder than ever before. Long nights bent over law books, her kitchen table buried in notes, her eyes red from exhaustion. Every page she turned, every case she memorized, was fueled by the memory of that strike. It was no longer about her alone. It was about every black woman told to sit down, every voice silenced in the name of order. Years passed, but Angela never forgot. She rose, step by painstaking step, until impossible became reality. She earned her degree. She passed the bar. And then, against all odds, she ascended to the bench. The day she first entered the courtroom as a judge, her robe trailing behind her, the air shifted. The same walls that once held her humiliation now bowed beneath her authority. She took her seat, the judge's seat, the very place where she had once been dismissed, struck, ridiculed, and as she adjusted the microphone, her gaze fell upon familiar faces in uniform. Officers who had once sneered now sat stiff-backed, their smirks erased. Angela's heart pounded, but her voice was steady. This court is now in session. The gavel struck, sharp and final. Every sound magnified. The shuffle of papers, the nervous clearing of throats, the way the officer's eyes darted anywhere but toward her. She remembered the slap, the laughter, the silence of those who should have defended her. And in that moment, power returned to her hands, not as vengeance, but as justice. Inside her head, the roar of blood matched the rhythm of the gavel. She could taste the metallic tang of adrenaline, feel the sweat gathering at her palms beneath the robe. But she was unshaken. The breaking point wasn't just the violence of that past moment. It was a transformation, the realization that survival had turned into triumph, that dignity stolen had been reclaimed, magnified, and placed at the very heart of justice. And for those who had once mocked her, they could not laugh now. They could not look her in the eye. Their silence was louder than any apology. Angela sat taller, the weight of the robe heavy on her shoulders, but not crushing. Instead, it felt like armor, like proof that the system could be bent, reshaped, forced to reckon with the people it had once sought to erase. The courtroom held its breath, and for the first time, Angela did not feel small. She did not feel out of place. She was exactly where she was meant to be. That was the breaking point. Not the slap, not the laughter, not even the years of struggle that followed. The breaking point was here, when the cycle cracked, when the silenced voice spoke louder than the gavel, when every smirk finally vanished beneath the weight of justice embodied in a black woman's rise. And in that silence, Angela understood something. The system had tried to bury her, but they hadn't known she was a seed. And now, she had grown into something they could never uproot. Angela's rise to the bench wasn't just a personal victory. It was a tectonic shift. But victories, even when they come, are never simple. In the quiet moments after court adjourned on her first day, she sat alone in her chambers, the robe heavy across her shoulders, the silence pressing against her ears. She thought about her mother, about the boy whose case had been brushed aside, about every woman who had swallowed indignity to keep moving forward. The past wasn't erased. It lingered, a constant reminder of why she was here. Her community felt the impact immediately. Neighbors who once only knew her as Angela from down the block now spoke her name with pride. Children pointed at her with wide eyes, whispering about the woman who looked like them and sat in the highest seat of the courtroom. For them, she wasn't just a judge. She was proof that the system could be bent, even if it refused to break. But power brings weight. Angela felt it every time she took the bench. Each case was not just about the defendant before her, but about the centuries behind her. She carried the unspoken expectation to be fair, but also to be more than fair, to counterbalance centuries of imbalance. Every gavel strike was a test, and still scars remained. The memory of that slap never left her. Sometimes, in the middle of proceedings, her cheek would throb as though the humiliation lived in her skin. Trauma doesn't disappear, it transforms. And Angela knew her own transformation came at a cost. Relationships had strained. Nights of loneliness had stretched long. She had sacrificed pieces of herself to reach this seat. Yet she also knew this. Her presence in that courtroom was bigger than her pain. The officers who once mocked her now filed in with their heads lowered, addressing her as Your Honor. Some avoided her gaze altogether, ashamed or perhaps afraid. Others carried the same arrogance in their posture, but they could no longer act on it. Authority was no longer theirs to weaponize. It was hers to wield with discipline and restraint. Still, Angela didn't use her robe as revenge. She knew vengeance and justice were not the same. Instead, she wielded her position as a mirror, forcing the system to confront itself, one case at a time. She listened to voices often silenced. She granted dignity where it had been stripped, and though she could not undo the slap, she could make sure no one else left her courtroom carrying the same sting. Her story spread beyond her city. News outlets ran features about the black woman judge who once endured a public assault in the same courthouse where she now presided. Activists pointed to her as a symbol of resilience. Critics muttered that her presence was a political statement. But Angela ignored the noise. She knew her real impact wasn't in headlines, but in the everyday moments when a young defendant looked up at her and, for the first time, believed they might be seen as human. And yet, even with her robe, her gavel, her authority, Angela understood the truth. The system itself had not changed. It had made space for her, but countless others still suffered its weight. For every Angela who rose, there were thousands silenced, struck, erased. That is the haunting truth of her story. It was never just about one slap, one courtroom, one woman's rise. It was about a system that continues to fail, and about the rare, extraordinary defiance it takes to challenge it. So when you hear her story, don't file it away as inspiration. Don't dismiss it as a neat tale of triumph. Sit with the discomfort. Ask yourself, why did she have to endure so much just to be treated as equal? How many others never got the chance to rise? Because this story isn't just Angela's. It's ours. It's a mirror held up to society's face, daring us not to look away. And if it unsettles you, good. That means you're awake. Now the question is, what will you do with that discomfort? Will you share it, speak it, confront it? Or will you let silence carry it away? The way silence has always carried injustice forward, the choice is ours. But Angela's life proves one thing beyond doubt. Silence may protect the system, but voices, even bruised and trembling, have the power to break it open. Angela's story is not just about one woman rising from humiliation to power. It's a mirror showing us how fragile dignity becomes when the system itself is built to strip it away. But here's the truth. Her fight didn't end in that courtroom, and neither should ours. Because for every Angela who made it, there are thousands still silenced, still struck, still waiting for justice that never comes. So don't let this be just another story you watch and forget. Talk about it. Share it. Ask the hard questions. Change begins when silence ends, and silence is the only thing that keeps this cycle alive. Angela found her voice. Now it's on us to find ours.